take this sword to the Templars in Paris. God's kingdom depends on it.
Hey guys, it's Chris and welcome back to SmokeScreen, but today I want to do something a little bit different. I want to do a different type of video, actually on a different show, and I want to talk about Nightfall. I don't know if you guys have checked it out yet. I've checked out the first episode on the History channel. I actually watch it on Amazon Prime, but the point being that this is a show that could bridge the gap, or at least help bridge the gap, during the long night until Game of Thrones Season 8. Alright, so Nightfall centers around the Knights Templar, a real organization in history, one of the most powerful organizations in history at that time, and the search for the Holy Grail, which of course is all based in actual history. A lot of these events in the show did happen in actual history. The Holy Grail is an arguable point, of course, so if you guys have seen the Da Vinci Code or read the Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown, you'll know what I'm talking about. It goes into this subject matter as far as the Knights Templar, the search for the Holy Grail, and that looks like it's going to be the main point of the show. And in episode 1, they do escape from the Holy Land alive, some of them do, and the Holy Grail gets lost in that process. And then the show jumps forward 15 years later in France under King Philip, still on the search for the Holy Grail that they had lost 15 years earlier. And those historical events are actually pretty accurate in the show so far that I've seen. Now, of course, all the characters and the drama surrounding those characters are all completely fictional. Our main character, Landry, is the center of attention here. He is the guy who essentially becomes the master of the temple in France, and they establish fairly quickly there's going to be some issues between him and King Philip. So a lot of people, of course, are going to ask, is this comparable to Game of Thrones? Well, yes and no. If you do like the medieval style shows, that style of battle, those type of things, you'll like this show. If you're interested in things like actual history, the history of the Knights Templar, and possibly the Holy Grail, then this show would be something you would enjoy for sure. Now, there is a little bit of gore, not nearly as bad as Game of Thrones, but there are some gory shots, and I will say I don't think I remember hearing one single cuss word in episode 1. But you have our main character, Landry, and of course he's sworn to celibacy like all the Knights Templar are, so that's very similar to like the King's Guard or the Night's Watch or something like that in Game of Thrones. After losing a little bit of faith, our main character Landry does have a love interest in this story, and I won't get into too many details to give any spoilers away in case you do want to check this out, but let's just say it's a major character in the France establishment. So to quickly recap the main points of episode 1, you have them escaping the Holy Land, they lose the Holy Grail, and 15 years later they are established in France. They're still going, but they really don't have a mission anymore. They think the Grail is lost. Landry has kind of lost his way a little bit, but the master of the temple gets killed. The story does have a lot of religious tones to it, just like Game of Thrones in a sense, but actual religion and history. The Knights Templar in real history was actually established to protect pilgrims along the roads between major cities of many faiths, not just Christianity. And they actually established a modern banking system. There's a lot of drama going on between the Christian people of the city and the Jewish people of the city, and that's actually where the main drama of the first episode kicks off. The Jewish people are asked to leave the city after a murder, and then there's somebody that's kind of backstabbing, and kind of a double agent, and he ends up trying to get them killed on the road as they leave the city to take all their money and wealth, because King Philip needs the wealth. Now, King Philip is not on board for this. He is actually a pretty intriguing character so far from what I've seen in one episode, but you do have a lot of political intrigue, a lot of political backstabbing, very similar to Game of Thrones in that sense. As I said before, you find out that Landry has lost a lot of faith in God after losing the Grail and getting him kicked out of the Holy Land. And let's just say he doesn't uphold his oath so well anymore. And obviously they're going to find out about something's going on between the Jewish people and the Christian people. There are other players that are using political backstabbing, etc., to help that tension grow between these two people. But the aspect that excites me the most is actually the Holy Grail itself and the quest to find the Holy Grail again and kind of get back to their main purpose. Now, of course, the actual Holy Grail is an arguable point. I will say that they do show an actual cup in the first episode of this series. Apparently that's the Grail, or they think it is, but I don't know if they're going to end up going the route of the Holy Grail itself being the actual cup from the Last Supper, or somebody like Mary Magdalene, because in real history there is a question about Jesus having a wife named Mary Magdalene and her actual womb or their offspring being the actual Holy Grail. And it's an arguable point throughout history that this is actually something that may have happened, where they kind of made up the story of the actual cup at the Last Supper being the Holy Grail to hide the actual Holy Grail, which would be the bloodline of Mary Magdalene and Jesus. So we'll see if they go that route in the story to find out if that cup actually means anything at all. Anyway, guys, I'll leave it there short and sweet. I just wanted to give you a little bit of insight into Nightfall and what I've seen so far. As far as it being comparable to Game of Thrones, again, yes and no. If you like that kind of medieval period, those kind of battles, that type of thing, that kind of storyline, this is a great show that's very comparable to that series. If you like just medieval warfare and that type of thing, this show may be a good fit for you. As far as the grit and the blood and gore and battle porn and all that good stuff. Now, of course, the missing element here is the fantasy aspect. This is based off real actual history. The lore or the backstory behind all this is something you can actually look up in the real world because it actually happened. The other aspect that I would say would be missing is obviously the fantasy aspect, because there is no magic that we're aware of. I don't think there's going to be. So there's not going to be any White Walkers or some kind of magical force off in the distance. There's not going to be dragons or dragon fire and that type of thing. So if you enjoy that aspect of fantasy, that's certainly going to be missing from the show. But for me personally, I just enjoy any type of treasure hunt type shows. I've read all these books by Dan Brown. I've studied Leonardo da Vinci and his interest in this type of thing. I think it's a great concept. I do like actual real history and what it's based off of. I love reading about the Knights Templar, who they were and what they did and what they possibly did. I really like the aspect of real history as far as the Holy Grail, if that's an actual thing or not, or if it's an actual person like I mentioned before as far as kind of the Dan Brown series. So I'm really looking forward to it. But is it going to be a Game of Thrones caliber show? No, nothing will ever be a Game of Thrones caliber show. And I will say really quickly, this show looks pretty damn good. They don't have nearly the budget of an HBO, obviously, but for what I've seen so far, it actually looks really, really good. But there's not going to be a lot of CGI and all that type of stuff because there's really no need for it. You are going to see some pretty cool battle scenes. I will say really quickly, there's one battle scene in the beginning, and I really like what the director's doing with the aspect that you're getting as an audience member. You're seeing the knights from inside their helmets. You get a perspective from that. So you do see them, you know, riding around in their badass armor on the horses with the Knights Templar costumes and all that stuff. But you also get shots from inside their helmet as they're yelling at each other. And so you're getting their perspective from inside that helmet when on the outside is a bunch of damn chaos. So I thought that was a pretty cool touch. And the battle scenes so far are pretty good. You get a few slow-mo shots, but it's not overdone like a 300 type thing. So it's pretty straightforward and to the point as far as the battle so far. But so far, I'm really enjoying it. I think overall, this is a show you should check out and at least give a couple episodes to see. But again, this will never be a Game of Thrones style show. So anyway, guys, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Let me know if you've seen it or if you plan on checking it out at all. And again, this show is on the History Channel. I believe a new episode comes out every Sunday. So episode 2 should have played last night, so I will check that out and possibly make videos on these if you guys are interested. And again, you can also watch this on Amazon Prime if you don't have the History Channel or don't have cable, that type of thing. And if you have seen it, what do you think about it so far? And in your opinion, is it comparable to a Game of Thrones style show? At least to help get us by through this long, long night, because they have confirmed that Game of Thrones Season 8 will not drop till 2019. Thank you for all the support, especially to you guys on Patreon. And a huge shout out to my executive Patreon SmokeScreen producers, Griffin, Lala, Kissa, Powell, Marylin, Bentley, JoAnna, Doc Holliday, Goska, HoonJive, Horton, Erin, Habig, John, Carey, Anastasia, Jason Landers, DTizSmith, MJW, Carole Brown, and D Brown. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate the support. And to everyone on Patreon and out there in YouTube land, I really appreciate it. And if you dig what I do here, please give me a like and a share. I really appreciate it. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.